The animal kingdom is incredibly vulnerable to external factors that affect their lives. Drought, deforestation, fire, lack of food, disease, and of course hunting by predators, both animal and human. One of the major differences between humans and animals is that we have more control than they do over our external circumstances. So if we have something like a disease, like COVID-19, we have and can have and feel more than one response to it. In the animal kingdom, they would perhaps get the disease, get sick, and then die. Because let's face it, chimps don't have doctors, tigers don't have any medicines, and coyotes, I'm sure, don't have any kind of concern or emotional reaction to a disease regarding business, which is something, of course, that we as humans have had to deal with. Okay, let's look at the last 3 years. We had the pre-pandemic. We know what that was like in 2019, right? We had no idea what was coming. Then in 2020, we were in the midst of the pandemic, and now we're in the post-pandemic, or we're very close to the post-pandemic world. So we know what the pre-pandemic looked like, and we know what the pandemic looked like. But what will the post-pandemic world look like, especially in your own life? Now, we as humans have an opportunity. We can create a better future for ourselves now. 2021 is in your hands. Resilience. Now, the definition in the Merriam-Webster dictionary is the ability to recover quickly from illness, change, and misfortune. Now, misfortune we've had in droves in 2020. Businesses shut down, some never to reopen. Thousands of bankruptcies, and people draining their savings accounts and their retirement accounts, like their IRAs and their 401ks, and increasing their credit card debt incredibly just to keep paying their bills and keep putting food on the table. Now, the job situation as we know it is very different today than what it was also a year ago. And one of the things we are facing as another major change is how will we react as humans? And how did we react? Well, last year we pivoted, we adjusted, and we overcame some of the changes and the challenges in the workspace, in our schools, and our home. We adjusted our budgets and spending. And you're still standing, are you not? This is a definition of resilience. And you and I have the power to personally make more of these changes in 2021 than we did in 2020 if we choose to. The world is different, and the sands of time are flowing much more quickly than ever before, even in the last 10 years combined. Now, the Cambridge Dictionary definition, and I like this one, it says that resilience is the ability to be happy and successful again after something difficult or bad has happened. Now, that seems like a little bit of a lame explanation or definition to me, but we certainly know that a lot of difficult and bad and even tragic things have happened. But you're still here, all of you, and me too. And we humans have the luxury of time in order to rebound and be happy and successful again. Well, depending on how you define those things. So is that resilience just part of us and our habits, or our skill sets? Or is it human nature? Or is it also from our choices? Well, in an article in Psychology Today on failure, the authors stated that resilience is the psychological quality that allows some people to be knocked down and to come back at least as strong as ever. Now, I would say that resilience is the ability to come back, period. But let me ask you, where does this quality come from? Now, some would say that it's part of your built-in personality. Anyone who has had kids knows that kids show a certain personality when they're very young, even when they're merely months old. And anyone here know what I'm talking about? If you have kids or if you've raised kids, you know some are stubborn and some are argumentative and some are very sweet and docile. There are those who like their routines and those who pitch a fit when their routine is disrupted. Then there are those who are just watchful and observant. Of course, some are very active and might throw their food across the room in a fit of temper. That we think these things are personality, but these are actually just hints of a child's personality yet to come as it's forged. If you wonder about yourself, well, ask what traits that you showed as a baby and compare them to the personality that you have today. You might be very interested, and maybe there's even some family stories there. I don't know. Now, psychologists call these early signs not personality, but temperament. Now, temperament is innate, meaning babies have certain temperaments, but temperament is not their personality. Personality starts to emerge in an elementary school, according to Canadian psychologist Dan McAdams. And he says, personality is the sum total of an individual's emotional, attitudinal, and behavioral responses. It emerges in the truest sense only really as adolescence approaches. Now, McAdams goes on to say that an individual's personality traits don't really appear in a clear and consistent manner until the teen years, pretty much. Sometimes in the tween years, but mostly it's the teen years. And before then, a child's behavior can be seen as primarily reactions to other personalities around them. even if they have a very visible, strong temperament. And I'll give you some examples of that. So it's true that as kids, we show certain traits when we're quite young. But as we grow, we find we must accommodate to others, and so we constantly test words and actions to see if they will bring us the desired reactions. Like the child who says why, or says no, or stomps their foot because they want to see if they can get a positive reaction or a reward. Or if they say why, or the other ones who say why not, why not, why not. Or maybe they want gum or candy or whatever it might be. So if they get a reaction, if they get the food, if they get attention, if they get the reward they're looking for, or especially if they get praise or hugs or love, they're likely to repeat that behavior. Now, if we get anger back at us, shouting, punishment, scolding, well, then we'll mutate just a little bit in order to avoid those negative reactions. Now, I posit that this is helping to form a personality, and of course, temperament is a part of that. But we are all the same. Like the famed psychologist B.F. Skinner said about operant conditioning, he was the father of that, getting reactions is what it's all about. As experts say, even as adults, the fear of loss or the hope of gain are the key drivers throughout our life that add to our conditioning, and they happen throughout our childhood, especially, and we make adjustments based on the reactions that we get. Well, what if a child comes from a family in which there's an alcoholic parent, or there's drug addiction, or physical abuse, or God forbid, sexual abuse? A child will absolutely learn to exhibit certain behaviors that do not provoke the negative reactions. Very often a child's personality is subdued, or they subdue it by themselves and is quelled, and the voice is shut up or shut down in order for the child to survive with the least amount of pain. If you know anybody who comes from that kind of a home or a background, you know what I'm talking about. They will develop habits that will help them survive, which is a form of resilience. Now, research shows that being more resilient means you're better able to navigate life's challenges from a place of strength and conviction. Learning and adopting simple habits are scientifically proven to improve resilience. Outside of the home, we're subject to creating different behavioral responses as well. As we go through school and childhood, we encounter new authority figures, like a teacher or a nun, a minister or a priest, and definitely bullies. Classmates who are our biggest influences when we're young, we are certainly looking at them for reactions. What is it that they will like? How will I fit in? What do I have to do differently to be liked? Well, we think about it and we observe, and we make our own judgments, we take it in, and then maybe we mutate just a little bit more now so we can get positive reactions from them. Curiously, with our siblings, we can be our truest selves even or especially when we're fighting and yelling. And we tend to be more bonded with one sibling than another in particular and share their friends or hobbies maybe. And often their opinion matters the most to us. Now that was true for me. In my case, it was my older brother, Jim. We were separated by only 1 year and 1 grade. Now, the neighborhood kids always played with both of us, and Jim's friends were my friends, and my friends were Jimmy's friends, and we were almost like twins. At 13 and 14, we were even stealing each other's clothes because we could wear the same things, and that was the era of blue jeans and flannel shirts. Anyway, it seemed kind of natural to follow my older brother and his views, and to follow him in a job, and to change my personality just a little bit to try to fit in with him and his friends. They probably weren't the friends that I would have picked, but they were a popular group, and so I wanted to fit in. So it also translated to my school behaviors a little. Now, Jimmy and I were really bonded growing up, and it seemed that way into the tween years and then the teen years, too. Maybe for you it was a sister, or maybe if you were the oldest child, you took on a more parental role, but it was still a bond. Now, if you don't have a sibling, then maybe you had a best friend or a posse, and you imitated or modeled them, and unconsciously, again, mutated or twisted just a little bit more to get more attention from them or their friends, especially if you saw them as popular. On the other side, well, we might swipe candy or a toy from a candy store, or maybe shoplift earrings from the drugstore, even if that's not comfortable as the real us that we're finding. Conversely, we also might study hard or not study at all, or join a sport in order to stay close to that friend, even though that is also not necessarily really the real us. Did you ever feel like you had to be some kind of pretzel, twisting yourself this way and that in order to fit in with friends or to get points at home or at school? We all do. Back to the psychologist, studies show that at some point in childhood, somewhere between 12 and 20 years old, we make a real and definite and conscious decision to break free of that person or persons, that brother or that sister, or even a twin, and certain behaviors. And we consciously, actively decide that we want and need to test ourselves out in the world as a separate person and prove that we're okay on our own and then comfortable on our own. What age was it for you? Do you remember when that happened for you and why you did it? Well, that's the start of finding your true self and your true voice. In technical terms, this is called an identity moratorium. For the parent of a teenager, though, it's often called hell. But an identity moratorium is one major step in the process of finding a sense of self. It's a period of active searching for one's occupational or religious or ethnic or sexual orientation or form of identity to determine who you really are. It's a normal part of the quest of teens to find themselves. I have a dear friend, Dee, who's an identical twin. Now, this means that she and her sister were basically one egg and one embryo, and then the embryo splits and became two. She and her sister look identical, they sound the same, and as kids, their parents dressed them the same, and they were each other's best friends. But at 13, my friend Dee made a conscious decision that she needed to separate from her sister and become her own person. That's pretty young, but she did. She got out from the shadows and away from that fierce connection she had. Now, this is really unusual in twins or triplets or any multiples because they are so incredibly bonded normally, but it was an absolutely clear crossroad choice and identity moratorium for Dee. Some folks call it an active identity crisis, but a teen knows it is completely a step in finding their true voice and their true self. Again, Canadian psychologist James Marcia made it clear that identity moratoriums were first and foremost a time of exploration. The period may feel confusing and difficult to endure for kids and their families, but many psychologists believe that an individual must go through a moratorium before he or she can form a true sense of identity, and that is then called a state of identity achievement, something we all strive for. Now, an identity moratorium can happen at any time in one's life. For me, it really happened when I was 20. I did a semester abroad, my junior year in college, and I was separated from Jimmy, and it was an astonishing experience. For the first time in my life, I really felt that I could make friends on my own. Jimmy wasn't there, his group wasn't there. Oh my gosh, people liked me, not because I was Jimmy's little sister, but because I was Julie, because of who I was. It was kind of a mind-blowing thing, absolutely, but it was absolutely key to finding my own voice and my own identity. It was an identity achievement, for sure. This can also occur for different types of identity, like your work identity. So, is what you do who you are? Is that actually your identity? Or is it just what you do? Are you married or single? Well, that's a social identity. We go through lots of different identity moratoriums where we find ourselves in a new way. Just like defining resilience, we adjust and we pivot as we find something new about ourselves. Now, this is also a time when one of the biggest things that we find out about ourselves is our personal financial voice. Prior to this awakening, we go through some life experiences and learn ideas or beliefs or habits or nothing at all from information we get from our parents or from our church or our teachers about money, like if we deserve it, or can we have it? Maybe the only way to have it is to work really hard or to go to college to have it. Well, maybe when you were younger and you thought about numbers, you thought, oh, I'm no good with numbers, or I can't handle money, or maybe somebody told you that you couldn't, or maybe all you want to do is spend it. And maybe the idea of budgeting or record keeping just makes you freeze, deer in the headlights. Well, in my financial coaching practice, I work with people all the time to help them find their financial identity and their voice, separate and away from all the messages and the behavioral responses that they created internally, like money is evil, or having it is no good, or I'm not worthy of money, so that they can be free in a new identity achievement. Now, maybe this pandemic has been a wake-up call for you, as it has been for many companies and countries. Maybe it's time for you to go through another identity moratorium while you actually look at all you have gone through in 2020. You've adapted to stress and adversity. I suggest that now is the time to build some new skills and habit as a component of your resilience. Find your voice about work. Life is short. Find your true voice about who you are and who you want to be in your financial life, and develop new skills for your financial survival for the next disaster. Because trust me, one is going to come. It may not be a pandemic. It might be a divorce. It could be medical bills. It could be a car accident. It could be illness of a child or a parent. It could be a fire. But something is coming, and you need to have some skills to be able to be resilient. Don't give your power away either to somebody else and say, here, you handle it. I don't want to deal with the money. And I want you to be sure that you don't have to rely on making desperate moves during a desperate time. Our whole world shifted last year, and we're moving into a new era, and a time when so many of the structures that countries and governments, and we thought would be there have shifted or disappeared. You can't change the whole world any more than animals in the animal kingdom can, but you can change your world, and you can change your life, and you can change the part of the world that you have control over and be better prepared and better able to navigate life's challenges from a place of strength. And that's a huge part of what resilience really is, isn't it? Thank you.